to the Tuesday, January 24th meeting of the school board. We're going to call this meeting of our early session to order at 6:15. We're going to start off with item 1, which is adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Have a motion by trustee Walker, a second by trustee Varner. Do we have any board discussion? Seeing none, do we have any public comment on this agenda? Seeing none, back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. It's adopted. Item 2, we're going to adjourn to a closed session per NRS 288.220-4 to discuss labor relations with the district management representatives. This will be for discussion only. welcome you to tonight's school board meeting. It's Tuesday, January 24th, 2023. While we're convening the meeting, we're closing our closed session. We're reconvening to our public session, but we're asking for a few minutes. We're having some technical difficulties. We have a trustee who is sick but trying to participate remotely, and we're trying to get them on board, if you will. So bear with us for a few minutes. Tuned in. We already reconvened to public session. We were just having some technical IT difficulties. But we are now on item 4, which is the first item of our public session. So we're going to start with our flag salute. Trustee Walt, if you could lead us in the flag salute. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 5 is the superintendent's report. This is for information only. Superintendent Fueling.
Thank you, Vice President Cassiopo. This evening, we have a very special guest by the name of Drea Cabral. Drea, would you, well, I just, two things I want to say about you, and then if you'd like to come up and say anything. Drea auditioned against 18,000 other musicians, young musicians. So that's not 18 or 180 or 1,800, 18,000. Trying to be selected for the Honors Performance Series, which is sounds like an international, I don't know a lot about it, but it sounds like an international thing. But here, Drea is going to be performing on her clarinet at Carnegie Hall in New York City. So a huge celebration for Drea and for Carson. Drea, would you want to come up to the microphone and tell us a little bit about the experience or anything along the way? You just have to hit the little button to make it light up green.
Hello. Hi. I heard about it on my own just through researching different opportunities, and I brought it up to my lesson teacher, and he was like, "Okay, you're gonna do it." I was like, "Okay," and then I got nominated for it when I got into All-State because you have to be nominated by somebody. And so then I submitted my audition, and then I heard back a couple months later that I got in. Yes, I'm very happy. It's coming up soon, next week, so I'm just practicing my music and
Sorry,
No,
you made that sound very simple, like, yeah, I just did this, and they said, yeah, and here I am, but that's obviously a huge feat. So number one, congratulations.
thank you.
And number two, I mean, what kind of, obviously you're already talented, but a lot of rehearsal and stuff had to go into that. So, I mean, ballpark, what kind of time effort was that for you over and above your normal academics and music?
So usually I try and practice every day. Doesn't always happen, but I try. And so I had to learn a solo and then a separate excerpt apart from the music that I was already learning from all my other ensembles. So usually an hour or two every day.
Then regarding Carnegie Hall, when is that?
I fly out to New York on February 1st. So
Okay.
1 week.
Wow. Okay. Well, I was going to be in New York, but I'm not going to be in there that quick. Otherwise, I'd sneak in the back door or something to listen. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
fantastic. So you should be super proud. And Mom, I'm sure you're ecstatic. That's amazing. So good for you. I mean, that's just another example of the talent we have in many disciplines throughout our district. And I'm sure you're going to do fantastic. Don't let it intimidate you. I hope you don't. Enjoy the experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations. I know that your mom's proud, your parents are proud. We're proud of you, and I know Carson City is proud of you. So great job. I mean, what a feat. 18,000 people you competed against. What an accomplishment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the board? Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. You can leave the hot seat if you want.
Okay.
We just wanted to take a moment. This is your time to shine. I'm sure this won't be the first, but or the last. So congratulations to you. That's
Maybe you can come back and play for us one of these days. That'd be great.
and if
Thank you,
there's Mom, if there's some kind of, I don't know, be tough, but if there's a way that we can listen in remotely, even a recording after the fact, we'd love to hear or see that experience. Okay. And I apologize. Normally we would bring people up to the mic, and we're not going to do that. But Mom, for those listening, Mom just said that might be a possibility. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, congratulations again.
Don't forget to eat some of that New York pizza while you're there. It's fantastic.
Just a couple other updates. as you know, the legislative session is almost upon us. We've been visited by one assemblywoman from Clark County, which I greatly appreciate. We've set up an appointment for Senator Stone, who's also from Clark County, and then also we have an assemblywoman from Washoe, Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch, who will be visiting. So I'm really excited about that, having folks from the big counties come to the rural and see what we have going on here and have a conversation. The Governor's State of the State address was last night, which there's a refrain from some 80s song, and in the background you hear, "What does it all mean?" I don't know what song it is, but that's what I think. It sounds good, but I don't know what it means. So I'm excited to, over the next months, try to find out what that does mean for us. Sometimes we know the devil can be in the details, but excited that it seems there might be some recognition of the need for additional funding for education. So that is all I have this evening.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it. Item 6 are board reports, and this is for information only, and we're going to start off with Carson High School. Ava?
Hi, I'm Ava Schofield. And so really what we've been working on is we have our Winterfest Dance Week coming up next week. And so the overall theme is like Senators Lost in New York. And so Monday we're going to do a Marvel dress-up day. And then the nighttime activity we'll be watching Into the Spider-Verse from 6 to 8 at the high school. And then Tuesday is Taurus Day, and the nighttime activity we have the varsity home basketball games. Girls is at 5:15 and boys is at 7. And then Wednesday we're doing a Zoom day, so like business on top, casual on the bottom. And then we have the FBLA talent show that night here at the community center, and I think it starts at 6. I'm not positive though. And then Thursday is our Jersey Day, and the nighttime activity we have our Winterfest game. So the girls again are at 5:15, and the boys are at 7. And then the seniors will be crowned, like the senior candidates will be crowned at the boys' halftime. And then Friday we're doing an Adam Sandler day, so just like baggy clothing. And then the nighttime activity, we rented out the Carson Raceway for 5:30 to 7:30, so the students can have 2 free hours of racing. And the underclassmen crowning will be scattered throughout that activity. And then the dance is at 7 to 10 in Senator Square on Saturday. And that's all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Any questions for Ava? Seeing that, Ava, I just have a general question. I mean, we're 3 years out from the beginning of COVID, if you will, and obviously we've had effects throughout, but from a student's perspective, are we back to normal?
I mean, I was never in high school before COVID. Well, I'm only a sophomore, but I think it's back to normal. I would have to ask like some seniors about it.
Yeah, I mean, you were in school still though, so
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I think we're pretty because I'm in leadership and all the activities we're planning, we haven't had to, especially this year. Last year we had a little bit more of a struggle, but this year we haven't had to like cancel anything because of COVID. Change it, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thanks always for coming and giving us a report for Carson High. Next, we have Pioneer Academy activities. Faith?
Good evening. I am Faith Key, and I will be representing Pioneer Academy for the remainder of the school year. So the first thing on our list is the Pioneer Leadership students and yoga students helped with Thanksgiving baskets and went out to 30 families in Carson City. The second thing on the list is the Pioneer Speech and Debate Club participated in the Carson High Debate Tournament last weekend and gained new personal successes in their participation. Number 3, the Positive Vibes program continues to gain in numbers. Each week, staff notes students who have gone above and beyond and increased positive vibes at Pioneer or in the community for the week. To date, we have celebrated 124 positive actions. The student body would like to congratulate Miss Julie Gingrich, Pioneer math teacher. Not only is she helping students with math courses, she serves on the Pioneer leadership team, teaches AVID courses, and is is the niece of NFL coach Jimmy Johnson, and was just inducted into the Douglas High School basketball honoree group a few days ago. She is honored along with the other coaches and players. Go Miss G. That concludes the student announcements for Pioneer High School.
Thank you. Same question for you. How are things kind of from your perspective?
Well, so I am a senior. I do think that It has gone back to normal, like behavioral wise, but I do think that COVID had a huge impact on the education that was done during it because, obviously it wasn't as good as it could have been, being online. It was kind of like a random thing that happened. But I think that it is definitely getting better, and I can see that with the like increase in I don't know, just participation a lot in classes. It was more of like a we don't really care thing, like COVID, but then now you can see like people starting to participate and enjoy their class more. Thank you.
Good, thank you. And I want to thank both our school representatives. I mean, we always get good reports and they're always well-spoken, so thank you. Next, Nevada Association of School Boards update. Mike?
We had the training last week. It was great. Everybody was able to participate, and I think we have a few meetings coming up here in February, so there should be more information to share as we move forward.
Okay. Next, we'll go to board announcements. Rich, can we start with you?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank Chartwell for the little dessert stuff. Thank you very much. At Boardwick, they wanted to thank all the families who came out to the Dads and Donuts last Friday. They had over 500 people who attended the event. And they want to thank everyone who helped support the students. I happened to be able to attend that event, and I tell you, there were a lot of people there, and it was a very good event. They ran out of donuts a couple times, had to go get more donuts, but they pulled it off, and everybody seemed happy. The dads all were with the kids. Everybody's talking and having a good time, so I think it was a wonderful event. And then on this Thursday, they're hosting the family stream night at the Boardwick lunch room from 5:30 to 7 p.m. They'll be following this by a presentation to the families about the school goals, as well as giving the parents an opportunity to ask questions or voice concerns, or other family members who may attend. They will also be offering pizza slices and a drink for $2. And they were asking people to please RSVP via Google form sent out by Parent Square, which was sent out on Monday. And on Friday, they will be holding their first semester award ceremony for each grade level throughout the school day, and invitations have been sent home with students who are receiving an award. Then from Fritz, next Thursday, January 31st, is their family reading night. They will celebrate the evening with a third grade music program, book fair, and some fun family activities. And that ends my report. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rich. Molly?
So my report is from Empire, and I just started reaching out. So I will be included in their PTA meetings. I hope to be able to attend as many as I can. Also with their Mustang Messenger. I thought I was away from Parent Square, but I will be back on Parent Square with that as well. And so I'm scheduling a time to meet with Mr. Tuttle and Ms. Foster to, do a tour and whatnot. And then I have just made communication with Carson High School as well. And we'll start scheduling times to do visits at Carson High as well.
Thank you. Mike?
So, Mr. Conley wanted to thank Don Creaney for the years of service when he was working with him. And they just have a few things to report tonight. So they finished up their winter map testing, and they're going to use that information to support students academically. They had several students selected for honor band, honor choir, and honor orchestra. So he wanted to thank Mr. Brill, the band and choir teacher, Dr. Fox, the orchestra teacher, for leading and supporting the kids. They're continuing to offer homework club for students after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And they want to thank the teachers that are providing that additional work for 90 minutes after the contract hours to make that possible. And then the girls volleyball team is having a great year, and he wants to wish them luck this season, and thanks Coach Reed and Coach Witter for all of their hard work. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I got to meet with Mrs. Robinson and Miss Crookshanks. Miss Robinson's at Carson Middle School. I was able to meet with her and some of her staff and just talk a bit, get to know them and what's going on at the middle school. If any of you are wondering, we always have a viewer. Miss Pryor watches every single board meeting, every single one of them. She doesn't miss. She's the dean of students there. So just want you guys to know that. Miss Robinson guided me to the CM News that Mr. Hostler does and puts on. I did get to watch that, and it's pretty awesome. Parents, if you guys want to know what's happening at your kid's school, that is the place to go for information. I'm meeting with Miss Crookshanks at Mark Twain. Winter map scores are being analyzed currently by her and her staff. My kids also introduced me to their morning announcements that Mr. Faulkner puts on. Excellent stuff. I love it. I do appreciate all the technology that our teachers are exposing our kids to. I think it's amazing. And the cutest thing I've ever seen happen in my meeting with Miss Crookshanks, it sounded like a bunch of horses were coming into the office. We opened the door and there was about 20 pre-K students from Miss Turner's class. They came in and just bombarded us with yarn snowballs. It was amazing. It was absolutely the cutest thing. And then I found out that that's their recess. They get to do a little recess, burn some fuel because they have some ice on their play yard. So quite possibly the cutest thing I have seen in a long time. So yeah, it was awesome.
Thank you. Lupe?
So a lot of things happening at Sealer Elementary School. Mrs. Zona informed me that the kindergarten students from Mrs. Sewell's class were asked to lead the Pledge of Allegiance last night at the State of the State address. So that was pretty exciting. And they began the access testing on January 17 to determine the progress that the English learner students are making in listening, speaking, writing, reading goals. And on January 20th, they held their first semester expectation celebration. They recognized their students' accomplishments for attendance, behavior, and academic growth. They did this in every classroom, and they gave students a bracelet and a pirate pencil and a ticket for reading and a ticket for math. And they entered their names for the grand prize for each classroom that they visited. So kudos to all those kids that are making progress, and we are looking forward to seeing more students being part of that group. They also have a lot of things happening during the week of the 30th of January. They have the Dress Up for Math Madness. On the 30th, they have Dress in Anything That Makes You Feel Awesome. On Tuesday, the 31st, Dress Up as Your Favorite Superhero. On the 1st of February, Dress Like Someone Who Works in Your Math Dream Job. And on the 2nd, Dress in Clothing that has numbers on it. And then on Friday, dress in 100th day attire. They also have a fundraising event coming up. The Sealer Girls PTO will be running their catalog cookie dough fundraiser starting on the 13th of February, and that will go through the 24th. The fundraising packages will go home on Friday, February 10th. So keep an eye for those packages. So that concludes my report. Oh, no, excuse me. I do want to say something else. So Emily Reagan, she's an English teacher and also the CTE teaching and training teachers coordinator. And so she has a group of students that she's working with. And she had them create a YouTube channel to basically do a recap of our meetings. And so that's really, really super exciting, guys. I want to encourage you guys all to watch that. It's for public consumption, obviously, but it was very exciting to see the students actually recap what we talked about for the duration of 2 or 3 hours that we're here. So I encourage you guys to go on YouTube and look for those videos. They're super awesome. They've done 2 so far, but they are definitely considering making more videos. The YouTube channel is Teaching and Training, I believe it's called. So look for those videos. They're super, super awesome. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you very much. And for those that might have not heard it, one of our board members, Trustee Crossman, is not able to attend tonight. She's under the weather, and we have her, though, remotely. Laurel, if you would have an update for us?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I do not have a report tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Last will be me. I just wanted to report on Pioneer Academy. Principal Zona sent this to me, and it looks like it was prepared by Amy Strom. And it's interesting. They are, I'm reading it off my phone, cold, so I hope my New York and LA public education serves me well here. I didn't get the opportunity to go to Carson. No, Discovery Block Whole School Activity is what this is about. And students of Pioneer Academy, CCSD's alternative approach to traditional education, grades 1 through 12 will be guided through Pioneer's Discovery Block program for the second time this academic year in an exploration of mathematical concepts. All students, both in-seat and online, will have the opportunity to investigate a few core mathematical concepts through the exploration of espionage, tessellations, projectiles, and puzzles. Espionage will travel the students through the history of code writing breaking, and students will work to crack basic ciphers using various algorithms. From the works of M.C. Escher, students will learn about tessellations and transformations of objects and figures to create amazing pieces of art. Projectile launching will have students exploring the concepts of quadratic functions. I remember those, quite fun. Velocity, initial angle, force, and many more in order to connect with the target. Students will confront the Tower of Hanoi, where they will use logic and an algorithm to determine the minimum number of moves required to solve an exponentially growing task. The Discovery Block program's main goal is to engage students in real-life endeavors and topics on a deeper level, allowing students to make connections between core concepts and standards from multiple disciplines. Other goals of the program are to expose students to possible college and career options and practice inquiry and collaboration. So again, Pioneer is always involved in some pretty cool things, and this is, one of the latest examples. So thanks for that. I know oftentimes people wonder, hey, are we, encouraging these kids with all the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, and here's an example that says apparently we are, and we're taking it to a higher level. So thanks for that, but that concludes my report. Next, we'll have association reports. Mr. Wallace.
Good evening, Vice President Casiopo, trustees, Superintendent Fueling. OCA was not able to make it down myself to the first board meeting for our 2 newest trustees, so I am Brian Wallace. We are of the Orange County Education Association, which represents all of the certified staff within the school district. It includes our nurses, our speech paths, all the teachers, our school psychologists, and any other licensed professionals that fall under NDE's scope for licensing. We look to continue our collaborative relationship that we have with the school board, especially with the 2 new trustees on board and Lupe Ramirez coming back as a returning trustee, and then the rest, especially as we get ready to enter into this legislative session. The State of the State address was enlightening. but it still doesn't go far enough yet when we take a look at the funding mechanism and we look at things like it still lacks an inflator. It's still adding money to it is wonderful, but it still lacks other components within the law that I know we need to continue to address. I know Superintendent Fueling's right there with us, coming off of the Commission for School Funding also. All of you are probably aware, should be aware by now, hopefully, of the Nevada State Education Association's Time for 20. That is our campaign and our push within the legislature for 20% pay raises, 20 students per classroom, and a $20 starting salary, or $20 per hour when it comes to a lot of our classified staff. That was something I felt was a little lacking within the state of the state, once again, is that we love to talk about teachers and our other licensed professionals, and while we are core members and in the trenches per se, we can't do our jobs without everyone else. And I know all of you are very aware of that, with custodian shortages, bus driver shortages, and changes we've had to make, and drastic measures, even like Washoe County had to do when it came to busing, it impacts the children's ability to get to us, which then impacts their education, and impacts our society and the future of the nation in Carson City. So we still have a lot of work to do. I look forward to working with all of you and continue our relationship, and I'll see Superintendent Fueling probably a lot at the legislature this year. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wallace. Well said. I think oftentimes and I've done it as well, we tend to generically say teachers, but it's the entire district. I mean, from each school all the way up through the district office, we have a lot of people doing a lot of work that sometimes isn't always seen or recognized, but it's so important. And so, yeah, I mean, we're with you on this. There's some changes that need to happen, and we hope we can get some of these through the session. Next, we have public comments. I know we don't have any online comments that I'm aware of. Do we have anybody looking to make public comment in person? Okay, seeing none, I'm not going to read the paragraph on public comment, but thank you. We will close public comments and move on to item 9. Discussion and possible action to approve academic credit for career and technical education, CTE coursework, animal systems, life science, and plant systems per NAC 389.672 and NAC 389.673. This is for possible action. And we have Tasha Fusen and Candy Robles. Welcome.
Thank you. Tasha Fusen for the record. I'm actually going to turn over the topic to my colleague right next to me, Candy, and she will go through the process that our district has used to cross-map the CTE standards to next generation science standards, and what we're requesting in terms of approval. And then we also have Kara Tirada, who is our science coordinator for the district, so she helped with that process. So she's joining us as well. So Candy.
Good evening. Candy Robles, CTE coordinator and acting work-based learning coordinator, my side hustle. Vice President Cassiopo, members of the board, Superintendent Fueling, thank you for your time tonight as we talk about academic credit for CTE coursework. This is a practice that has been available for years on the state website. Current technical education coursework may qualify for academic coursework once with the purposes of high school graduation if certain criteria are met. The criteria were met for this. I'm going to talk about it a little bit so that we can verify this happened. Students currently enrolled in the ornamental horticulture, greenhouse management, and veterinary science programs of study currently have the capacity to earn academic credit for CTE in the verified process that happened in 2019 when we aligned the content standards for Ag Science 1 and Ag Science 2 to next generation science standards. And the board approved that, and it went to the state level. When I talked to Nikki Hendy today, she said that about 10 students every year need that opportunity for the science credit. So most students at Carson High School take biology, chemistry, and then another science elective. Not all students take that third science elective or perhaps maybe credit deficient in some way. So when the counselors go back and go through their credits, if a student has taken those 2 courses, then they apply the science credit to that. In career and technical education at the state level, there's a transition from 3-year programs of study to 2-year programs of study. And that has directly impacted the agriculture and natural resources programs of study. So instead of ornamental horticulture, greenhouse management, and veterinary science, our next programs of study will be animal systems and plant systems. So our process is to go back and do the exact same thing. So our teacher, new ag science teacher, Lauren Gates, who could not be here tonight, and the Nevada ag teachers worked in committee to align the next gen science standards with the new animal systems and plant system science standards. And then in the columns, as you look at your board packet, she also offered evidence, which is a part of the process. Once she finished that process, we invited Kara to come in and verify together so that as the expert in the science field, she could verify that the standards in agriculture met the standards, the science standards. So once that's done, then I do my part, which is to create the sample letters that are also in your board packet and ensure that the teachers are appointed to the committee. So we have met all of the criteria, and CTE believes that, in fact, the next gen science standards do meet the criteria with the ag science standards to grant the credits if they are needed. So we're asking tonight, this is an action item. We are happy to answer questions, and we would ask for your support.
Yeah, thank you, Kara.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kara. I just want to let you know that I received both my bachelor's and my master's degree in agriculture science from Cal Poly Pomona. So my background really is in teaching ag science originally. So it was actually really, really fun, on top of being super cool, because I'm a total nerd science-wise, to go back to the ag science and get to crosswalk those with the NGSS.
Yeah. Kara, can you, just for the record, can you just provide us your full name?
Sorry, Kara Jean Dorado.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask the board for questions. I wanted to apologize. I think I butchered everybody's last name when you came up here. So I do it with a name like Cassiopo. I try not to do that, but my tongue isn't working well. And Kara, I didn't even mention you, so I apologize.
No worries.
Do we have any questions, board? Molly?
Thank you. So on your column, you know, where it gives us the CTE performance indicator, some of them are hyperlinked, you know, like when it says plant nutrition. What is that linked to?
That links to a lesson plan or a lab that the
Oh.
teacher implements in class.
Vice President Cassiopo, may I also
Please.
offer up a little bit of information? I know there was some questions previously, for instance, when it comes to our science classes in the Carson City School District, we require our students to earn 3 science credits for graduation purposes. In the state of Nevada, students are required to earn 3 math, 2 science, and then a credit of either math or science to make that additional credit. In Carson City School District, our students take 4 math and do 3 science. And we've aligned the courses that our students take for college entrance examination purposes, or college entrance acceptance practices, for NSHE. So for instance, to get into the Nevada Systems of Higher Education institutions, students are required to have 2 lab sciences. So one of the letters you'll see in the packet is information that we give to families to say, please be aware that utilizing this CTE class to fulfill in our case, a 3rd science credit, right? It may not be accepted by a university as a lab science or a science course. Now, you have to realize that there's tens of thousands of colleges across the United States, and there's no way we know in our seats what every college's entrance requirements are. So we do our best to align everything we do within our district to NSHE requirements, or Nevada Systems of Higher Ed. So if the kids go to UNR, UNLV, TMCC, WNC. But we always counsel the students that they need to be aware of where they might want to go outside of state, because other state colleges and private colleges have different entrance requirements. For instance, in Oregon, they require students to have 2 years of a world language, and she doesn't require world languages, those types of things. So that is why that other letter is included. So in our system, again, in our district, as Candy pointed out, we require all of our ninth graders to take biology. We require all of our sophomores to take chemistry unless they're on an individualized learning plan that states otherwise. And so that ends up being the 2 lab sciences they need. And then, of course, they typically take another either physics or environmental. We have a gamut of science classes that our students can take where they take advanced placement. But in this particular case, again, a student can utilize this CTE as long as they're completing the 2nd year of this pathway to fulfill that 3rd year of science. But it is typically only done if a student can't fit the other science class in their schedule. But either way, we've made sure the students have the 2 lab science classes required for entrance into at least Nevada Systems of Higher Ed. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Tasha, for clarifying that. That was going to be one of my questions. And then the other question I had was for the English credit requirement. What level of English are they taking for this particular program?
I think you're referring to the application, and there's different courses within the CTE pathways that we could apply for credit to be applied to another subject area. We're only talking about in this application science. We're not talking about English language arts or mathematics. So for what we're asking you to approve is for us to allow students taking the plant science and animal sciences, finishing the 2nd year course, to earn science credit. So in that application piece that you've read, that would be if we were asking for a different course to be able to qualify as English language arts credits, what we're not asking to do. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So students who complete principles of AFNR or health science or ag science, and then the plant science will receive a life science, a botany, but sorry, the caffeine is going, a botany credit. And those students that are finishing principles of AFNR and animal science will receive zoology credit. And that's all we're asking for, just for the science credit.
I appreciate the clarification and the explanation. And Tasha, to your point, yeah, I think it's important to let these parents know because, yeah, we can't possibly know what all schools are requiring. But I can tell you just from my experiences, a lot of times if these things aren't on those schools' list of accepted courses, you can still talk to them. And there's been times with my kids alone that 1 or 2 courses they wound up accepting. So there's always that possibility as well. But I think that's good to disclose.
Where we see this come up mostly is with student athletes. So, and then there's often, like there's a feedback process for student athletes who will be applying, for instance, to certain colleges, and they will actually then send back to the school for us to justify the course, and we'll turn in like course scope and goals so that they can see whether or not it's a lab science or not. So in reality, the reason why I'm mentioning that is why it's so important is the work that Candy and her team has done, and with all the links that you were asking about, Ms. Wallet, was because we could actually show in this case that these courses are actually could fulfill lab sciences. It's just what we can't say that it's a lab science because that's for each individual college to make that determination. But we have been asked numerous times, and again, it usually comes down to college athletes and their entrance into that field when they're going into college. So it's just an interesting thing. That's at least in my professional experience, that's the only time it's come up. But.
Okay, well, board, if we don't have any more questions, if someone would like to make a motion.
I'll go ahead and make the motion. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approved academic credit for career and technical education, CTE coursework, animal science, life science, and plant systems for the Carson City School District per NAC 389.672 and 389.673.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from trustee Ramirez. Any board discussion on this? Laurel, I just want to make sure you can hear us. Do you have anything you want to discuss on this?
Not on mute. I've been listening into everything and I don't have any. I just think it's another example of how our high school gives so many different options to kids.
Perfect, thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, none opposed. The motion passes. Thank you very much. And
Thank you so much.
don't go anywhere.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Item 10, discussion and possible action to approve adoption of the marketing instructional materials for grades 9 through 12 for the Carson City School District as budgeted. This is another item for possible action. Candy and Tasha?
Candy Robles again.
And
Same.
Kara?
And our +1. So in the previous agenda item, I talked briefly about the change of programs of standard, change of programs. So marketing is the third program of study that's going through the transition from a 3-year program of study to a 2-year program of study, started last year. That we noticed after the state board approved the new marketing standards on December 9th of 2021, that our current textbooks that were 10 to 12 years old no longer aligned with the new standards. And so last year, in the beginning of the year, we started the adoption process, reached out to all of the vendors, requested copies of textbooks that aligned, and met with those vendors at trade association meetings. We received 5 copies. And so in the fall and the winter, I aligned the chapters in each book with the standards. Then our teacher retired in December. And so one of the processes for instructional materials adoption is that you have a licensed instructor be a part of the committee. And Amy Freismittel, the former CTE vice principal, and I decided it was in the best interest of CTE to put a pause on the adoption and complete it when we had a new certified teacher. So in August, we hired Cody Stocker-Downey, who's our new marketing teacher, and we picked up the process again. So we've narrowed the book choices to 2, and then met all of the requirements of instructional materials. Josh Billings, our new CTE vice principal, looked at the copies. I did. I'm also licensed business and marketing, so I'm a licensed teacher in that area. I can do it. Cody did it. We had a parent representative, Anne Marie Cuneo, who taught economics at UNR and is also the director of the Public Utilities Commission. So she's highly qualified in that area. And then we pushed it out to all of the students in marketing too, to take a look at. And everyone overwhelmingly chose the Cengage book, Marketing 5E, which we would like to go with. So we met all the criteria. The interesting thing I'd like to share just about the students is that the students were really invested in the process. And their remarks, which I shared with the publisher, were that their biggest sell was that the text was predictable, and they really liked that. So in every chapter, there's a reference back to their current technical student organization so that they can apply those skills. And there are metacognitive pieces in every chapter that are predictable. They're purple in every chapter that go back to that. So it was so interesting that they embrace not only the content in the textbook, but the text features in the textbook that would lead them to learning. So I just want to give a shout out to all of those reading teachers out there for doing such a great job teaching students to utilize text features in instructional materials.
Great. Thank you.
May I
yeah,
add
Kevin,
to?
please.
So Tasha Fuson, for the record, again, I think it's really important. I like, as you know me, I like to give you guys a little bit of background information as well. So when it comes to instructional materials adoption, in the state. You heard me say this just a couple meetings ago, but things have shifted back and forth. So typically, at least for core area classes and world languages, the Department of Education initiates the process for the instructional materials adoption, and then they will send their findings to the state board, and the state board will do an approval. And now at the district level, then we typically have the opportunity to look at what's been approved at the state level, and then we make our own selection process here. That is different than this process. That's the reason why I'm pointing that out. With CTE has always been done a little separately. I think the state eventually has plans for them to go parallel or work together with each other. But currently, you have two different departments in NDE, Nevada Department of Education. And you also have this big changeover for career and technical education to take those programs, as Candy said, from 3-year to 2-year pathways, which means that there's new standards coming out, and we're looking at those new standards. Now, our teachers, we need to be able to get them instructional materials. To wait on NDE to go through the standard process could take another couple of years because there's lots of CTE pathways. So in this particular case, the next step, if you do agree, that's why we made this an action item instead of a discussion item, because I don't want to confuse people. You're like, hey, Tasha, last time you brought something in front of us, it was just a discussion, and now you're asking for action. Well, the reason why we're going to ask you for action is to approve us to say, yes, at our level, we're saying that we're going to approve this material, but then we have to take it up to NDE and the State Board of Education, who will have the final approval process before we can purchase. So that is something else for you to know. Again, it seems like I'm keep yo-yoing back and forth, but I want you all to know why that seems like it's the big yo-yo back and forth. So we're back to the fact that this textbook has not been approved at the state at this point in time. We're doing the first level of review and adoption, and then we're going to refer it to the state board for consideration. They have the final say. Does that make sense?
That does.
And
Questions?
then if the board approves it, any school district in the state could then use that textbook. So we're kind of helping others also.
Absolutely. Thank you, Trustee Walker. And that's really honestly because CTE is so, and you have to imagine how many pathways are available in the state. So yes, the districts, we have all kind of worked on going, okay, you do this set, we'll do this set, we're going to help NDA out. They're going to, and working together as a team to kind of collaborate on that. It is a really huge project. And again, waiting on the Department of Ed to take the lead on that when they're still in the midst of shifting some of those standards still. That's where the bulk of their work is going. So yes, I mean, so if we approve it, it goes to the state and state approves it, then it becomes available for all. So it helps. And anytime like Clark or Washoe or one of the other rules does the same thing, we benefit from that as well because we don't have to do the whole process and all the legwork, if you will.
I like the idea that we're being proactive on this and we're proactive where we can. Yeah, because, in the past, we've gone through the books or whatnot that are available through the state. And I do appreciate the fact that we're branching out and looking at these things. As far as marketing in general goes, I'm really happy we have this as an offering for our students. In my career, I started off just doing engineering. In the last 10 years, I find myself more and more doing marketing, and I'm self-taught and quite frankly a hack. So getting these kids early on in learning this and having a broad base for them is really going to set them up well for, future endeavors, whether they go to college or they do whatever they're going to do in life. This really gives them a nice entry-level background to it. So I'm glad we're offering this. We got Molly and then Rich.
Is there online, because at some point, with textbooks, are they going to become obsolete and we'll be, finding everything on?
That's a good question. So as a part of the process, the bid will go out for hard copies for the classroom and then digital copies for students. So they're online platforms. Components they'll have digital access to the textbook, but then the teacher will have an opportunity to chunk things out, and the chunked out PDF forms or the quizzes or the PowerPoints can be directly dropped into Google Classroom. Mm-hmm. It's LMS compatible, so there's lots of opportunity for kids to use the text digitally, which is the goal.
The textbook that is going around right now, is that one textbook for the 2-year program?
One textbook for the 2-year program, yes.
Yeah, I just had a question. You said as budgeted in here. What's the cost?
So our initial request for a cost would be $19,000 is what we were told in terms of our pricing, but that needs to be updated. And we know things get raised within, a heartbeat of time. So, but the initial amount was $19,000. So we'll have to see what it comes in. It shouldn't be too far off.
And I'd also like to thank you guys. You always give a very good explanation of what you're presenting. It's easy for us to understand, so thank you.
The only other thing I'd like to add is that in career technical education, we are not allowed in grant writing and grant funding to purchase instructional materials for primary use that have not been approved. So this is not only a need that our students have and our teacher has, but it's also a compliance piece, because as we move forward and perhaps have to purchase new subscriptions or whatever, it has to be approved by NDE to use it and purchase.
Sure. Thanks. Lupe?
So just for my own clarification, so students that are 9th graders, they are able to start taking these classes?
Yes. Yep.
That's awesome.
So the current pathway is Principles of Business in 9th grade. And then next year it will be Marketing 1, which will be the completer. And then they'll do Marketing Advanced Studies. And they can do that for up to 2 years. There's also an option in the new program study to do Industry Recognized Credential as a course. So we're kind of looking at the go-in list of industry recognized credentials and kind of looking beyond go-in to see what that could look like for students, so that we are preparing them for their next step, whatever that is.
Liz, thank you for these opportunities that you guys are providing the students.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? If not, it's an action item. Does somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion.
Lupe?
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the adoption of the marketing instructional materials for grades 9 through 12 as proposed by the committee for the Carson City School District as budgeted as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
I think Trustee Walker seconded it, as did Trustee Varner. Now we're good. Any further board discussion? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, board, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. On behalf of CTE, thank you so much. We appreciate your support.
And I think Candy is amazing. You guys have seen Candy many, many times, but we are so blessed to have her working with us and helping us with all of these projects. I mean, her job responsibilities and job description is vast. So I just thank you, Candy.
This is my 25th adoption, just so you know. It's kind of a landmark moment for me.
But really,
maybe
who's
it'll
counting?
be lucky last, right?
No, we do. We appreciate everything Candy and all of you do. I mean, it's fabulous. And our amount of CTE offerings is, honestly, if you're not paying attention, take a look at it. It's impressive. So we're going to move on to item 12. Discussion and update on the November 2022 final report. No, I'm sorry. Yep, I jumped ahead. We're going to move on to item 11. Then we'll go to 12. Item 11 is discussion and possible action to approve proposed Carson City School District academic calendar for the 2023-2024 school year. And this again is for possible action. Tasha?
Thank you, Mr. Cassiopo. So you get me again. It is that time of year for us to review and hopefully adopt our proposed calendar for the 23-24 school year. We try to do this in January so that we can get the information to our families and to our community partners that we work with so that they can make plans moving forward. So that is typically why our timing is January. I am going to point out some changes that you will see from our calendar this year. Also, this year's calendar, most of you know, it was significantly different than it had been in past. So we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit. So I started out this process in December and actually came up with 2 proposed calendars. Those calendars I shared out with our association presidents and principals and directors so that they could take it back to their stakeholders with their respect from their departments to give me feedback. So people sometimes think it's just a matter of, oh, is this going to work for the school, or is this going to work for athletics, or is this going to work with the contract? But believe it or not, we end up having a need to actually support needs from like nutrition services. Nutrition services, as an example, has to provide professional learning for their staff members, and we have to be able to build in time that they can actually have their staff members have access to professional learning. So there's a lot of moving parts when we put this calendar together. So I came up with those 2 different proposed calendars based on feedback that we have throughout the year from folks, as well as then in this particular case, nutrition services. So I'm going to give you an example. We have January 8th added on as a full day professional learning day. Well, from our nutrition services director, it was found that she had struggled immensely this year to try to figure out how to get her people enough hours for professional learning because they're still feeding kids on minimum days, et cetera. So that's what I'm talking about. So there's just, there was a need to ask transportation. Does this schedule work for your staffing and how you need to schedule things? Operations in terms of when they have to get different capital projects done. So all those things, as well as then the school's needs. So I proposed to those, sent those out, asked those department heads and association heads to confer with their stakeholders in their respective groups and give me feedback. I got that feedback and then went to the table again, condensed the 2 different proposed calendars into one, made some adjustments based on that feedback and requests from those different organizations, and then sent it out again to get more feedback. Then brought it to our principals meeting, which actually has all of our directors again in January, and then came up with the final draft that you all have in front of you. So it's gone through many different iterations and changes due to that feedback. So on the calendar you're looking at, it has a proposed start date of August 14th, which is the 2nd Monday in August. That is different than what has been in the past. Our traditional start date is the 3rd week in August, that 3rd Monday. But what has occurred because of the calendar, just the regular calendar, is that if we don't start a week earlier, then our secondary schools can't finish their first semester before winter break. And it's very important, according to our secondary principals and secondary teachers, that students be able to finish those classes before winter break because we have so much transition during winter break. We have a 2-week winter break. We have many, many students who will go on vacation. Many of them go to different countries to visit family, will come back second semester a week or 2 late. So what would happen in the past before we finished first semester before winter break is we would be doing makeup finals in like February, still trying to get kids credits and classes completed. And then many times kids would move into the district and not have finalized courses from other places, or they would leave us and not have finalized courses. So it creates a big challenge, and we resolved that. I think we're now probably into our 5th year of finishing our first semester before winter break. But this calendar, the way it is that we would have ended up with like an 80-day first semester and a 100-day second semester, which you can't do because there is still an NRS minimum seat time that's required in order for us to give credit for students. So that's why the initial start date, the feedback we got from our schools when people asked for the later start date, it was typically because it's hot in August and it's much cooler in June, which I appreciate, but I don't think the fact that it's hot in August is really a reason to not allow secondary students to finish their courses before winter break, right? So that's kind of how that decision was made, is it's the need of the actual need of the students and the need of the schools in terms of that completing versus it's hot in August, right? So that's why that proposed start date. I like to bring comparisons for you. I will tell you Douglas does not have their calendar posted yet for next school year. I've looked several times. It's still not up, so I'm not sure what Douglas is planning. But Washoe would have the same start date of August 14th. That's on their calendar. Lyon, for the first time ever, I think, that I've seen, is planning on starting after Labor Day. So that's a late start. That's a change for them. Are they? They're planning to do that going forward. And Clark actually would start on August 7th, so they'd even start a week earlier. Our proposed fall break is the week of Thanksgiving. We've had really positive feedback on that. We have had some requests or some suggestions that we did consider of whether or not we wanted to have a random fall break like Washoe does, 9 weeks in to split the first quarter from the second quarter. But again, we get to the point where we can't have that off fall break and have the week of Thanksgiving off and finish before winter break. There's just not enough seat time, so you have to make a choice. Do you make a choice to have a fall break that's not attached to Thanksgiving, or have Thanksgiving? And again, the feedback that we received was most people, given the option, would prefer to have Thanksgiving week off because our attendance for staff and for students is so low on that week if we don't. Like in the past years when we've had it, we've had tremendous amounts of absenteeism. So that is what we're proposing for that. Lyon and Clark have just the regular Thanksgiving days off, so they don't have a fall break beyond just the regular Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of Thanksgiving. Winter break for all of the surrounding districts would be approximately the same. We're proposing December 22nd through January 5th with a full day PD day on January 8th, and then students coming back on the 9th. Clark County is the only odd one on that. Clark County, again, would be going December 18th through January 1st with their staff and students returning on January 2nd. But we typically try to be closer aligned to the northern districts. And the reason why we do that, again, just for conversational sake, is we have a handful of staff members who live in Washoe, who their children go to Washoe schools, or who live in Lyon, whose children go to Lyon schools, or live in Douglas and children go to Douglas schools. So we do take that into consideration. It is very difficult on families. I'm sure you can imagine if they have really vacations that are off from each other. So that's why we take those into consideration.
I'm just curious, are you worried about, like, I think having that in-service day on the 8th is good for families. I think they're going to enjoy that extra day. I'm wondering, are you worried that a lot of teachers are going to extend their vacation and then we're not going to get our bang for our buck for that day?
That is an excellent question, Trustee Walker. I have considered that, but what we are really planning and thinking about doing as a district is we've had a request to consider giving teachers additional planning and prep time for second semester. And so the intent on that day would be for us to do like a half-day professional learning day, but allow then teachers extended prep time for the second half of the day to prepare for second semester. So coming back, giving them the opportunity to dive in and get ready. That being said, I think if our teachers know that they might be more apt to see like, oh, that's going to help me get prepared for second semester. You never know. But that's the conversations that we've had. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see because we'll look at attendance for that day.
One of the nice things might be knowing they have that day instead of, most teachers I know spend several days during the winter break preparing for when they come back. And so they could almost save that for that day if they really wanted to maximize their time.
I would completely agree. Superintendent Fueling has heard me say on many, 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 many occasions this year, I am 100% a teacher advocate. I don't think people understand how important it is to give teachers planning and preparation time. To me, it's like you wouldn't expect a doctor to walk in to rounds and do rounds all day and go to surgery, et cetera, and never have office time to actually look over patient records and prepare and get ready to go in. But we don't often treat our educators as the professionals that they are. It takes a lot of planning and preparation time if you're literally going to personalize instruction for students and make sure that you are using your assessment and your student work samples to really figure out who has what learning gaps and how am I going to individualize instruction for this student? That cannot happen on the fly. Teachers need time to actually analyze data to do that. They also need time to be able to plan with their peers and plan really, really robust, rigorous lessons. So giving teachers 50 minutes a day to do that is not sufficient time. So we try to do the best we can to build that time in for them on these minimum days and these professional learning days. So I will champion that to the end of my days, because I don't think we've given our educators the respect that they deserve in terms of needing and providing that time. So yes, that was our conversation about that day. I'd love to be able to give our educators an entire day just to do planning and preparation, but we still have to count for instructional minutes, and I'll get to that in a minute about why we do what we do.
Oops, really quick. So are the district PL days then, are those used for teacher planning days?
It is a combination. So I can jump to that.
Okay.
So in Nevada, under NRS, we are allowed to use the equivalent to 5 instructional days for professional learning and count them as instructional days. So what we have done in this calendar, we used to have 5 full-day professional learning days, and then we also had early release days. Some of you have probably remembered that we had early release Mondays. But the feedback we got from our staff moving into this year with this new schedule was that those early release days were not frequent enough to allow teachers to have continuity of conversations and planning. And also because it was only like an hour by the time you got students off the campus and buses gone, teachers really were only having truly and honestly 40-45 minutes to have those conversations. And that is not enough time to really get into any kind of meaty, true, earnest conversation. So instead of having 5 professional learning days and then I can't remember how many we had, if it was like 14 early release days about being an hour, we combined those and did the 16 minimum days. Now we have a 2.5-hour chunk of time. And what it looks like for that 2.5-hour chunk of time, and that's after students leave and go home, is that we've asked our principals to spend an hour and a half of that time on professional learning, so doing 90-minute professional learning modules, and giving teachers an hour of cooperative planning time, or PLC time, professional learning communities, time that they can meet within same subject groups or same grade level groups for common planning and preparing together. So that's the reason why it was set up the way it was set up. The feedback we did get from our staff, though, which was interesting enough, as we've done this calendar this year, is many of them missed then the opportunity when we had, like last year on December 6th, we did a full day professional learning day at Carson High School, and we have every teacher in the district come over to Carson High School, and they were able to pick different learning sessions. Well, the feedback we got then this year is, wow, we really missed being able to collaborate with our colleagues across sites. So could we do something like that? That's why we were thinking on that January 8th, we could do a combination of everyone at Carson High picking like maybe 3 professional learning modules in the AM and then sending them back to site in the PM to be able to then prep for their kids showing up on Tuesday. So we're constantly trying to ebb and flow to, again, give our teachers the time that they need for professional learning and collaboration with colleagues. But in addition to that, actual best practice research tells us teachers should actually be meeting weekly. So most of our elementary schools, for instance, will actually take 1 prep period of their teachers per week to have weekly meetings for professional learning communities. And they're only 45 minutes. And again, by the time a teacher takes and drops their students off at the special, and by the time they go and pick them up, it's really about 30-35 minutes. But we ask them to do that. In our secondary sites, they typically will schedule PLCs before school or after school. All right, during that little bit of time frame that they have when school gets out before the end of their contract. So teachers are constantly trying to carve that time out themselves, but super difficult because ask any teacher how many 504 meetings that they go to, or IEPs that they go to, or parent-teacher conferences that they go to, or if we're doing clubs and activities or sporting, if they're coaching, the time for them to be able to have before and after school to do those things are next to impossible too. So again, we try to build that into the day so that they have that opportunity because it's important. They're professionals and they deserve to be treated as such. And that means that they need that time. If we want high quality instruction going on, then we better give them time to plan high quality instructional lessons. So I will skip that part when I get to it. But okay, so then spring break. In the past, this is a change. In the past, in our district, we've always had the week before spring break off and the Monday after. There was a request and feedback that we flip it to have the week after spring break, or excuse me, the week after Easter off, and then the Friday before. So instead of the week before, Monday after, we're now having the Friday before and the week after, if that makes sense. That also put us more in alignment with our surrounding districts. So for those folks that live in other districts, it helped them with their being able to be on a break with their families. Our proposed, Washoe County actually has 2 weeks off, so theirs is March 25th through April 5th, so that falls right at the same time ours would. Lyon is April 1st to April 5th, so that would be the same time as ours. And Clark is not at all. As always, that's the theme here. Theirs would be March 11th through March 15th. I have no idea, not even closely, like completely off from ours, but there's that. The proposed last day of school for us would be May 30th. Washoe's would be Friday, June 7th. They're a week later because they do have extended vacation times during the year. Lyon would be June 14th, again, because they're starting after Labor Day. And Clark would be Monday, May 20th. So about a week and a half earlier.
Having the last day of school on May 30th, what does that do then for graduation being on June 1st? Because I mean, all your elementary teachers are gone, your middle school teachers are gone. Are we then asking our high school teachers to come in and donate that day, kind of on their own?
Yes, and we always have, honestly. So our teachers, we do what we ask for parent volunteers and we ask for teacher volunteers. Luckily, we've always had enough of our PTA, PTO, or it's a PTO now, but PTO members and staff members that say, yes, I will work. And yes, it's beyond their contract time. And we just rely on our teachers' goodness of heart to come in and say, yep, I'll work it. So we've done that traditionally, and we get it covered every year, surprisingly enough. But I agree, that's true. And we do try to finish school on either a Wednesday, Thursday every year because our high schools do need time. Carson High needs time on Friday to review transcripts. So that's the reason why people have often asked in the past, how come we just don't go up to that Friday and then add another day on somewhere else? Well, it's quite extensive review process, so grades have to be posted, and then the counselors have to go through all 2,300 transcripts on that Friday to certify that students are making, that the students have all the credits that they need to graduate. So that's a time-intensive process, and then they also have to go in and put all of the wonderful stickers on. If you've ever seen our diplomas, some of our kids have like 12 different stickers on there, signifying STEM program, STEAM's financial thing, a CTE, honors, all that kind of stuff. So that's what they do on Friday. So when families want to know, or when a community wants to know, why do we finish Wednesday or Thursday? Because on Friday, we're stickering the diplomas and verifying transcripts. Okay, we do have 3 contingency days which are required to be built in. So that would be May 31st, June 3rd, and June 4th. NDE requires us to have those designated dates in case we need to bring kids and teachers back. Our proposed start and end times will remain the same for all schools this coming year. And then we talked about those 15 professional learning days. So that is the reason why, is to, again, instead of having 5 professional learning days, do the 16 minimum days and the 1 full day professional learning day. What this looks like, because we are on an adjusted calendar or a non-traditional calendar. So if you're on a traditional calendar, you're required to meet 180 days by state law. So we apply every year to be on a non-traditional calendar, which that means that our calendar is done by seat time or instructional minutes that kids are in school. So we are able to actually just calculate. I calculate how many minutes our kids are in school based on the number of days that we're in school and what times they're in school. What that means for our schools, actually calculated this up. In our schools, with our existing schedule, this schedule that you'd be looking at, our elementary schools actually have approximately 38 days over what's required by state law in terms of instructional minutes. So 38 days over. Now, that doesn't mean, 180 days a school year, now add 38. We're not at, obviously, 218 days. What that means is the school day by state law is only required, for instance, for first graders to be 4 hours, right? And we're 6.5 hours. So when you look at the number of instructional minutes that we have in seat, right, that our kids go throughout the year, and you divide that number by the number of instructional minutes that are required by the Department of Education, we're in surplus of 38 days. Does that make sense? And in our middle schools, we have approximately a surplus of 16 days. And in our high school, Carson High School, we have a surplus of 6 days. So this calendar, although it seems like we have quite a bit of time for those minimum days for professional learning and collaboration from our teachers, we still exceed the state requirements by 38 days for elementary.
So then if we had a snow day, we wouldn't necessarily have to bring all the kids and teachers back a day because we have so much in the bank. Or do they make us bring them back?
No, that is correct, Trustee Walker. So I know Superintendent Fueling teased me about this a couple times this year. He's like, where's this piggy bank, Mrs. Fuson? So I'm always referring to our instructional minute piggy bank because that's what it looks like for our district being a non-traditional calendar. So I literally have a spreadsheet that we've calculated the instructional minutes. And for our snow day that we just had, then I take and minus out those instructional minutes and I write NDE a letter and say, we would like to not have to bring our students back on this day because we are in surplus now of 38 days for elementary and 15 days for middle school and 5 days for high school, and they typically approve it. So I've submitted our letter for our snow day, but we still have to get permission from NDE. So I haven't gotten that permission back where they sign off on it, but yes, that's exactly what that looks like.
Wouldn't we have to bring the teachers back though still because they're on a contract for 180?
Absolutely,
days?
Trustee Varner, that's exactly right. Our teachers come back and it's because of the contract, not because of the instructional minutes. So when our teachers will return this year on the Friday, and we'll do professional learning for them on that day that they return. We'll use it for professional learning. Okay, so let me see where I'm at there. Okay, we did take a look at attendance. I want you to know this year, thus far, first semester, so with the early releases, minimum days being on Wednesdays, the middle of the week, did it have an impact, negative or positive, on attendance? What I can tell you is that Mondays and Fridays continue to be our highest missed days for teachers and students alike. Our minimum day Wednesdays actually have no statistically significant difference from non-early release Wednesdays in case. Actually, if you look at it Wednesday by Wednesday, some minimum day Wednesdays have higher attendance than non-minimum day Wednesdays. So we're not seeing an impact in terms of student attendance or lack of attendance or teacher lack of attendance on those days for this first semester. So they're well attended. In addition to the other professional learning days that we chatted about, we are planning to have our new hire the same time. We have new hires that will start on August 2nd. That's a little bit different because in the past we've started them on the Monday and then they go that week and then they have the 2 days off and then they come back with returning teachers. We've pushed that so they would come in on August 2nd and then they would have their 5 new teacher days and then still roll into then the following days when our returning teachers come. So we still plan on having 5 days of the new hire. With those 3 teacher days, that first day is a site-based professional learning day for our returning teachers. The Thursday is a professional development day, district-based, and then the Friday by contract, they have a teacher work day to prep for the first day kids coming in session. So that remains the same. We also try to give time, as we've discussed in the past, on our district professional learning day for our teachers to do their online trainings that we have. Every year teachers have to do things like bloodborne pathogens and slips, trips, and falls and all of those things. So we try to build in time for them to do their online training through Absorb on that day, as well as give them time for things like building their emergency lesson plans, that kind of thing. So we've been asked in the past to make that as a consideration. So we try to build all of that into that Thursday so that when our teachers hit the ground running on Monday with kids coming in, that they've had at least a decent amount of time to try to get a solid foundation together so that they're not feeling behind. So that's what that looks like when the teachers come in. So that is what I have for you, unless you have other questions for me.
So, yeah, what I'm getting out of this, what you're telling us is the calendar's pretty simple. It takes you a couple hours to figure out. No, I remember talking to Mrs. Kima about this. It's an endeavor. And I mean, thank you for doing the work on this. There's no easy solution, and to fit all these things in is a challenging task. So thank you for the explanation, the clarification. And really, that's all I had, was to say thank you. The board may have some questions, but I'll open it up to the board. Rich?
Yeah, I was wondering, you put this out to the staff, and what was the percentage of people who liked it, who didn't like it?
So it's not necessarily in the manner that I think you're referring to. So when I ask for feedback, I send it to the principals, I give it to all the directors, and I send it to our association heads and say, please look at this, give me feedback, right? Work with your stakeholders and give me feedback. Some of our site principals chose this year to survey their teachers, but that was not at the district's direction or request. So I think of our elementary schools, I think 4 of the elementary schools did an actual survey of their teachers to send that, feedback. And in those particular cases, based on the results that they shared with me, which I have, I think they probably had, the vast majority of their teachers and support staff members give feedback, but not all sites did that. And that's not what they were asked to do, which is fine. I still took it into consideration based on that.
The next question I had is, was this put out to the public, the families of the school district students, for feedback to see their thoughts about this calendar? Because it's quite a lengthy calendar, starting the new teachers on August 2nd, and then the students on August 14th.
So we do post it on our district website in December for people to view, but we do not also survey our families. I mean, obviously, as you all know, we have close to 8,000 students. So surveying, trying to get feedback, and then trying to take that feedback in addition to all the other considerations that we have. We've not done that as a past practice, nor do our surrounding districts that I'm aware of. At least they didn't as when I was a parent.
And I'm glad you brought up about the absentee on Wednesdays, because that was a question I asked last year, Superintendent Fueling, and he provided the details that it wasn't a really big increase. But I'm wondering, have you got any feedback from the parents about babysitting issues on those days at all, or any concerns from the parents or family members?
No, that is specifically one of the questions I asked our principals, is if they'd had any feedback from their PTAs, PTOs, or just parent engagement groups of whether or not that created a hardship. The principal feedback was it has not created a hardship that they've been aware of. We haven't received any phone calls at the district office about it being a hardship. We did make arrangements with the Boys and Girls Club for our employees this year, because our employees did have some concerns about what they were going to do with their students. So we did work collaboratively with Boys and Girls Club to make sure that they would actually, I think they charged $65 is it. It was the club fee. And then our employees, students could go to the Boys and Girls Club for all early release days. So it was a wonderful partnership with them. And we do have several of our employees that took them up on that. And then they did open that as well then to community members after they filled it with our employees. So I appreciated that partnership. But thus far, we haven't received any negative feedback on that. And again, even from our student, because we looked at our student attendance data on Wednesdays is just as high, if not higher, than on other days. So I think our families have been able to figure that out. We're not showing that it's having an adverse effect in any way, data-wise.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, I don't see that this looks all that different from what our current calendar is. So I think our families are pretty well adjusted to this plan.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I agree. I remember last year, whatever it was, we started maybe a week later, but graduation was also like around June 8th. So, yeah, things fluctuate a little bit.
It fluctuates. And I can tell you that we are going to continue our work with Boys and Girls Club to see, And we had very positive conversations with their new director, but trying to do on-campus programming for our families, we do know, and they were willing to come to the table and do that. They just simply did not have the staffing. So I'm hoping that our staffing issues get resolved, and that we will be able to literally offer programming on those early release Wednesdays on each of our elementary school sites so the kids don't have to be transported. So that's what we would hope to occur, and we'll go back to conversations with our partners to see if we can get that into place. I'm sure if staffing isn't an issue, then they'll be happy to do that. So we'll have to see how that progresses, but that conversation's been in place, and again, they're very open.
Historically, I guess, being new to the board, not knowing, what brought you to go from 5 professional development days to 16 minimum days? What brought the district to go from, because I know when I was teaching, it was full days, 5 full days versus the 16 minimum days.
So that was feedback from our staff stating, our teachers stating that there's too much time between their professional learning sessions for continuity purposes. So we would have, for instance, one in October, then we would have another one in December and one in February, and then one typically, I'm missing one of them in there, but they were spaced quite a bit apart. So staff would say, that the professional learning that they had was too disjointed. There was 2 months between last time we had a session. Now we're doing a follow-up session, and what did we do and where were we at? So, and then also with the early release days, that there was too short of a period of time for them to even have really good conversations. So our choice to move into this year was based on staff feedback about wanting more frequent periods of time to be able to do their collaboration and for a longer period of time. So that's why we went to that model.
And how did you get that feedback? Like, how did you go to staff to get that feedback? Was
So-
it through the association?
So last year, after each professional development that we had, we did a professional development survey, and teachers then responded to, did this professional learning or opportunity support your learning needs? What would you propose if we could change it? How can we better meet your needs? So it was based on those surveys that we did after every single one of those professional learning days, and consistently the feedback from the teachers was, this is awesome, but it's too infrequent, too far apart, and again, professional learning, the early release, just not enough time. So that was what we made the change based off of.
And I'll just say, I know a lot of teachers who have told me how much they value those days. So, they have different, like PE teachers will meet or 3rd grade will meet. So they're able to collaborate, and a lot of the sessions you're providing are really helpful. So, I've heard from a lot of people that are really happy with that plan.
And thank you, Trustee Walker. And the reason too for our 2 new board members, the reason why we moved to Wednesday, because that was very specific, is we had them on Mondays before, and our absentee rate on those Mondays was very high. And our principals would get frustrated because they would put a lot of time, effort, and energy into preparing, real quality professional learning. And then that professional learning was tied to the next one. And then you have, a large percentage of your folks out, which I understand, trust me, from a teaching perspective. Writing substitute lesson plans and preparing for a sub if you have to be out is very difficult and time consuming. So if you give me an opportunity to miss professional learning time versus a day with kids, I'm gonna make my appointment on that. It makes total sense. I don't blame any of our educators for that. But that being said, we had high teacher absenteeism rate on those dates. So that's why we looked at our teacher attendance on Wednesdays for minimum Wednesdays, and it's very high. It's actually higher than it is on regular days, which is a flip from what it's been for us.
Tasha, I wanted to ask a question. So I noticed that the elementary parent conference minimum days, you have them scheduled for October 24th through the 26th, and then the same goes for middle school. But I noticed that for middle schools, we only have one, we only have them in October, but not in March. Is there a reason why?
Thank you, Trustee Ramirez, because I meant to comment on that. So I am thankful that you saw that. So we have not had minimum days for middle school parent-teacher conferences in the past. So back several years back, you'll remember we did student-led conferences. That went away several years ago. And we had feedback from one of our parents last year at a board meeting, if you remember, from Carson Middle. Actually, I think it was our PTA president over at Carson Middle, who came in and requested that we seriously consider doing middle school parent-teacher conferences and having an opportunity for parents to actually meet with the middle school staff. So I went back and talked to our middle school principals and said, hey, you know, this seems to be something that our community, at least from that presentation, and she had brought back the fact that she had talked to several parents and different PTA folks, and that it was really wanted. So I asked him, is this something you're willing to do or something you're willing to bring back? And what might that look like the first year? So both principals went back to their staffs, their leadership teams, and they came back and said, you know what, we would like to do that. We'd like the opportunity to do that in October though, because we really want to touch base with our families early on and try to get good learning plans in place and try to build that relationship. What typically it looks like for elementaries is elementary schools try to meet with all parents in October. In April, they usually only meet with the parents of students that are struggling, right? So that's why the middle school said, you know what, we're gonna be good with just doing the October right now. As we move forward, after we have one set of parent conferences based on our feedback from our staff and our families, we'll then consider whether or not we wanna do those April meetings as well, but let's start with one set. So that's where that came from. So that would be new this year too. Thank you for noticing that.
Oh, thank you. And you know what? That's one comment that I did hear from more than one parent who has a middle school student. They're like, why don't we have the opportunity to meet with the teachers? And so thank you for doing that for them.
I also think
Yeah.
that the parents, family members appreciate the longer break at Christmas and Thanksgiving, and the teachers do too, I think, so.
That was the other thing. Thank you, Trustee Varner, for pointing that out too. Again, just for context with that, that is something else that we looked at is high attendance dates for students and staff, and said, can we take and correlate our days? Because I did give feedback, why are we having a 4-day weekend for Memorial Day when we're out of school the next week? Well, we have very, very high student and teacher absenteeism on that day because it's like the launch of camping time. And families like to go camping on that 4-day weekend. So if we're gonna have another day off, we might as well put it on one of our days that historically has high absenteeism for both students and staff. So that's where that came from. That's exactly what we've looked at there. So thank you, Trustee Varner.
So I move that we accept the Carson City School Board, or that we accept the academic calendar for the 2023-2024 school year.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further board discussion? Seeing none. Any public comment on this item? See Mr. Wallace coming up.
Brian Wallace, OCA president. From the staff side of this, going back to your question, Trustee Varner, when it comes to us from Ms. Fuson, I take it, review it myself. Years ago, it used to be the association's duty to set the actual vacation dates. By law under NRS 288, we can set the spring break date and the Christmas date or winter break date. That was ridiculous. It got to the point where we would vote on it, our membership would set the date, we'd get it to the associate superintendent, Mrs. Kima at the time, and what we started running into were constant conflicts with NDE, because at that point in time, they would not release the testing schedule in a timely manner. And 2 or 3 different times, we were in violation of the testing schedule due to the spring break. So at that point, we negotiated it back to the district with some caveats in the contract to ensure that we still have some control over it. If Mrs. Fuson, for some strange reason, decided not to do her job, we would then take over at least that aspect of it. I then share it with my executive board, and which is mainly our building reps. So you have all of elementary reps get some input, high school get input. And as you heard tonight, you can only imagine the input. Nothing's gonna make anyone happy. I can guarantee you as soon as, if you were to approve this tonight, I will have emails as soon as it's posted on the district website about why this didn't happen, why this didn't happen. But this is actually probably one of the best calendars in the longest time when it comes to the alignment of breaks, because it seems more districts are getting a earlier head start on this and following our model. And so now we finally see spring break might align with 2 or 3 districts for a change surrounding us. The holiday break around Christmas is always aligned pretty well. And then with the permission of the board, when you approve this, we've done a really great job in adding in those extra days here and there. The one thing I talked to Mrs. Fuson about is that we're very cautious that if school ends May 30th, that we don't accidentally, we don't let the dates creep up on each other on the other end. And then suddenly summer got really short because you're into June 8th and then suddenly we need to start second week or first week of August for some reason. For our new hires, that's a little bit of a concern, but that time period for them to come in early has been extremely valuable. And it's one of the reasons we're able to recruit new hires a little bit better than other districts because we do spend either 3 to 5 very intensive days with them. So we do try to provide as much input from our staff. It's great site principals are extending it beyond and maybe gathering a little bit more. But regardless of what you approve tonight, we'll each get a couple of emails that it's not a very good calendar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Back to the board. We have a motion and a second. We've had a chance for discussion. So call for a motion. Call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Tasha, thank you very much.
Thank you
Yes.
for all of your explanation.
Oh, you bet. And thank all of you. This is, I told AJ my least favorite time of the year, but I appreciate all of you and it's been very helpful. And I appreciate Mr. Wallace because and OCA, actually all of our associations have been amazing to work with. So I appreciate all of their input too. So thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Wallace, you're welcome. We didn't want you to be lonely, so hopefully you get some emails. Okay, now we will go to item 12. Discussion and update on November 2022 final report from the Nevada Commission on School Funding. This is a for discussion only item, and we have Superintendent Fueling.
Thank you, Vice President Cassiopo. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. So I have a rather short presentation this evening on the final report from the Commission on School Funding. Some of you saw a rather lengthy presentation at the Nevada Association of School Boards meeting back in November. This is a much shorter presentation, but just really kind of high-level view of what came out of this final report after 3 years of serving on the commission. The commission is currently in hiatus because the legislature said we have to. And I am not certain that it will actually come back. I hope it does. I hope I can still be a part of it. So we'll see how that ends up. So just a little background. I want to say thanks to Dan Davis behind me for putting this together. And I think I may have shared this already with you, but there's this quote from Governor Grant Sawyer back in 1963 on the left that I've used over and over and over again in presentations over the years. The quote on the right reflects those same stats in kind of the modern day. Some of them don't exactly equate, but I think they're similar enough. One of the things I wanted to point out, because I just think it's special because I was a fan. On the left-hand side, the third picture down, I can't get the cursor. There we go. This guy right here, that is Mayor Bob Kroll from the class of 1963. But so just kind of painting a picture of where we are and kind of sharing that message of what education was and kind of where we are and some work that needs to be done. This is a slide I've shared before too, and I have 2 new board members, so I just thought I'd take the opportunity to share it again. So sorry for all of you who've seen it so many times, but This is the look at what has happened with school funding over the years. Back in the 70s, averaging 9.1% increases per year, 1980s, 8.9%, then down to 2.8, 3.3, and 1.4 over the last decade. Clearly, with maybe the governor's news, that has flipped. I will note that Chief of Staff Kiekefer to Governor Lombardo noted that there would be an unprecedented investment in education. And so the governor said 22%, and I think this is 22.5. So I'm not sure if 22% qualifies as unprecedented if we had a 22.5, if this kind of, translates the same way, but it could be 22.6, and then I think he wins. So, and just a quick background. So ultimately, the Commission on School Funding is all about the new funding formula and providing support, recommendations, monitoring over time. And so the new funding formula, the pupil-centered funding plan, these are numbers that you've seen before, but 2020, the importance of that year is that we are in hold harmless status, meaning that the new formula generates less money than what we received in 2020. So that we're supposed to be held then to that number until such time the new formula takes us above that. Strangely, through some manipulations during the last session, that number did actually end up being lower than the 2020 number, and actually going down from last year to this year slightly. So initially, like kind of based on historical, what we saw through the 2010s, we definitely expected to be in hold harmless for another 3 to 4 years. I don't know that that is necessarily the case now. So that may be a good thing, that we may be able to move away from that situation in all districts who are there. I don't believe so. I don't know that that's a good question. I don't think that has actually come up. I mean, I think it would take a significant decrease in state revenues, which then allows the state officially to reduce the amount of funding they're putting into education, so then less would come through. But I mean, maybe it'd be.
It's not tied to like student population, like we have something happen that.
Right. Yeah. No. With student population, there's an enrollment hold harmless you could fall into, which we did last year, but not necessarily from like a pure. It's entirely based on the per pupil amount, so the number of pupils almost doesn't matter in the calculation. So Commission on School Funding, just background, was created by SB 543 in 2019, providing guidance to, or the charges were to provide guidance to districts and Department of Ed on implementation, monitor implementation, make recommendations, review cost adjustment factors. So that's the CWI that I've talked about, where it's kind of like a cost of living adjustment, sort of, which the recommendation has been to get rid of that now from the commission. I hope that happens, because that would have a really negative impact on us this year. Amongst, being a small school or a small district, those sorts of things have factors that impact. Making a recommendation on an optimal level of funding, and if that recommendation is made, how to get there. And that is really where this report focuses on. And then review and recommend laws and regulations to improve public education. So the report, and I want to say too, that there's one gentleman, and I think we mentioned this during the NASB presentation, that is, I think he understands Nevada tax policy better than anyone in the state. His name's Guy Hobbs. He's the former CFO from Clark County, not the school district, the actual county. And he's been working with the legislature in legislative sessions since the late 70s. So he's been through kind of the taxpayers revolt and all that sort of thing. So he's seen it all. So one of the things within this report is noting what has been determined by legislatively commissioned studies as adequate funding. And adequate, again, is if you look at all the state requirements that are out there for us as a school district to navigate, what does it actually cost to do that? And if you can, I gotta get the cursor over again, sorry. You can see down here, and this is in 2020 dollars. At that time, $9,500 about that we were being funded, but the third one down, the light blue, is then what this company says what it really costs. This is what it would really cost to do all those things we are supposed to be doing in education. The lower number, or the 2024 numbers, were estimates after inflation. I don't know that they ended up necessarily being that accurate. We'll know better next year. Just up above, it looks at the per pupil funding by state. Nevada, again, ranks rather lowly. We actually lost a couple places in the last, as of 2022, and well below U.S. average overall. And actually, the example I just want to use, so part of this study is looking at, really looking at staffing and saying, okay, so if you're a school that is, you're a middle school and you have 1,000 kids and this is your demographic population and here are the needs of your kids, what should your staffing look like? And so the example I'll use is Carson High. So if you take Carson High's data and you plug, it's basically a formula, you kind of plug it in and it pops out, well, here's what how much staff you should have. Carson High School would have almost 90 more staff members. There's already almost 180 at Carson High School right now. But in order to provide to the level that the state is saying should be happening, that's effectively the difference in staffing, which is, it's incredible. I mean, to the point where, like, I don't know where you would put all those people. Carson High is a big building, right? But, you know, we'd put on a third level, put the swimming pool on top, maybe. So looking, yeah.
So hypothetically, if we had that staffing, what are we missing? Like, what are we missing if we had that?
It is, I think there's actually 30 teachers that would be added. And a lot of that is driven by like class size. So the functional ideal class size is an absolute max of 25. So that would drive, you would need more teachers to make that happen across all your curricular areas. There's more EL, English learner support, both in terms of teachers and paraprofessional help. More staff for special education, more office staff. It's kind of across the board. They don't get into like custodial. It's more instructional and office support, really. What's that? Tutor, yeah. Instructional aides, yeah. This next slide just looks at, so if you were going to get to where you need to be 10 years from now and having the effect of inflation, you would need to add about $3.2 billion to the pot. Now, that's a lot of money, considering the entire education budget is about $4.6 billion as of this year. But I'll note, I think one of the things I just go back to that kind of, I don't want to say it upsets me, but it just gets me, is that, so we're saying to do adequately, like to get to this base level of what it should be, we have to wait 10 years. And like, that's a generation of kids. So that just upsets me a little. But realistically, it's a lot of money. And so the important thing too, so this was done, a lot of these numbers were derived before inflation really started hitting. So truly, I think once this gets updated, that number is going to end up being higher just because of the impact of inflation. So that will be revised. And so too, so you're looking at like 2030, and you know, the governor was saying we're going to add $2 billion to the system, which is an incredible amount of money. But the reality, the impact of inflation kind of takes away from that. So that's where I think there's still going to be more than that $3.2 billion number is going to increase, even though we're $2 billion of the way there, just because of the impact of inflation. The recommendations for revenue, it was a very thoughtful process, I just want to say. So there's 4 kind of guiding principles of if I recall, Mr. Hobbs laid out, there's like 10 to 12 kind of things to consider when you're levying a tax, like from a more academic standpoint. And so these were the 4 pieces that the commission said were important for, if this is going to work, this is what those revenues would have to look like. And ultimately, we're talking about a tax. Like there's no way to get around that. But it would have to be sufficient, first of all, otherwise none of this makes sense. Then stability and predictability, so that given kind of the ebbs and flows of the economy, the business cycle, that you generally know about how much you're taking in over time, and you can predict that. Competitiveness, so the concern of what increasing taxes would do in terms of attraction versus states around us, because we know Nevada is attractive because of being a low tax state. Tesla just announced a $3.6 billion. Yeah, actually, I guess the governor announced it, but yeah. I'm sure they'll get some great tax breaks with that, but whatever. And the last one, equity. So horizontal and vertical equity. So just within who is paying and then what amount of taxes they're paying relative to their income. So that is considered a part of it too. You don't want it to be a regressive tax that's harder on folks with lower incomes. So you want to make sure you're taking that into consideration. And really what it comes down to is ultimately the recommendations are to look at property tax and look at sales tax. Within the property tax, there's a lot of different things that can be done, and it generates a wide variety of revenue levels. So the 3 primary things within that is reconsider the current property tax cap of $3.66. So really by constitution, that tax cap cannot exceed $5. But when you're looking within the county at all the different tax rates that are being levied, $3.66 per $100 of assessed value is currently a maximum. Reconsidering abatements. So abatements came in, I think, in 2005, and it's had a pretty significant impact. And I forget, somewhere within the report, it actually shows what the total amount of property tax potentially lost to abatements is. And the last thing is depreciation in calculating the tax base. So Nevada is the only state that actually has depreciation of the taxable value of homes over time, and down to basically 25% of value, which is really significant. And so that would be, in terms of modernizing what we have, that would be something else to consider. With sales tax, the amount of money really just depends, because it's all a function of the percentages you have and the tax base you have. But really recognizing this idea of what they call in tax world leakage, and this idea that there are more and more things in our economy that are not being taxed. Online transactions, which there was a bill last session that died, but that many online transactions are not subject to sales tax. But you would want to be careful if you did create some new sales tax or modify that you're taking into consideration it's only discretionary services, not things that are absolute needs of people. But one of the more interesting graphs, I think, and just to kind of put this in context, so Nevada, this is going back to 1965, or actually, sorry, this is the U.S. overall. This is not just Nevada, but this is every state. This is everywhere, where the percentage of the economy of total like value created, expenditures on that value. It used to be that goods were much more prominent in the economy and services were not. And so there's been this huge change over time. And the reality is that, you know, you have sales tax set from a time that reflects when goods were much more dominant within the sales within an economy. Well, that has completely changed. And so the service side is not taxed. So that's a huge loss. And over the long run, that's just a squeeze on all government entities, right? As the economy changes and becomes a more service-based economy. So trying to recognize that in some way and just recognize that, you know, there needs to be a change. There needs to be recognition of that, really not just even for school district, but for all government entities to continue providing the services that they need to provide. This is just a list of some of the more common services that are being taxed in other states, but not being taxed in Nevada. So each line tells you the number of states that are taxing on these various services. So we're clearly not alone in any of them, but some are definitely more common than others. And some of them have lobbies to help make sure that that doesn't happen. So, that's really all for the evening. I know I've talked about this several times over the years, I guess, but since this final report came out in November and it was submitted, and I know not all of you were at NASB, I thought I'd just at least have an opportunity. There was supposed to be a standard slide deck that all of the folks on the commission would use going around and trying to spread the word, and that hasn't happened. And in some ways, the governor may have stolen some of the thunder trying to get into some of this stuff with some of the numbers he put out last night, which is totally fine. So, but any questions?
Board, any questions? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
It's tough. All right, well, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Item 13, approval of the consent agenda. This is for possible action. Motion by trustee Walker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by, I'm sorry, who said that first? Was that Rich or Lupe?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. So Lupe, I thought I heard you first. Motion and a second. Any board comment?
I'll abstain from item C since I wasn't present.
Okay. No further board discussion. Do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none. Board? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Item 14, informational items. This is for discussion only. No action will be taken. Any questions on the informational items, board? Seeing none. Item 15, request for future agenda topics. Seeing none. Item 16, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.